What's the creepiest thing that you've seen other families do that they accept as totally normal? I met Jessica in sophomore year when we got paired up for a chemistry lab project. She was quiet and kind of awkward, but really smart, and we ended up becoming decent friends. We'd eat lunch together sometimes and study at the library after school. After a few months, she invited me over to work on a presentation we had to do together. I drove to her house on a Saturday afternoon and pulled up to a normal-looking suburban home with a tidy front lawn and a two-car garage. Nothing about the outside suggested what I was about to walk into. Jessica answered the door, and immediately I noticed the plates. The entire entryway wall was covered in decorative plates mounted on wooden stands, blue and white porcelain ones, plates with landscapes painted on them, commemorative plates with dates and events. They were arranged in careful rows, filling every inch of wall space from floor to ceiling. I figured it was just an entryway thing. Maybe her parents were collectors or something. But then Jessica led me further into the house, and I realized the plates were everywhere. The living room walls were completely covered. Display cases lined the hallway, each one filled with plates organized by theme or color or era. The dining room had floor-to-ceiling shelving units holding hundreds of plates, and ironically, the actual dinner table was tiny and pushed into a corner to make room for more display cases. Every single room was like this. The kitchen had plates mounted above the cabinets and on every available wall. The bathroom I used had a glass cabinet next to the sink filled with what looked like vintage china plates. It was like living inside a museum gift shop. When we got to Jessica's bedroom, I tried not to let my face show what I was thinking. Her room had a mattress on the floor in the center, no bed frame. Around the perimeter were 4 large display cases, the kind you'd see in an antique store, each one packed with plates. There was barely room to walk. She had maybe 2 feet of wall space near her closet that was plate-free, and that's where she taped up a few photos and a calendar. We sat on her floor and worked on our presentation for about an hour. I was being really careful not to bump into anything or move too quickly. The whole time, Jessica's parents were in the living room reorganizing some of their collection. I could hear them discussing the merits of different display arrangements. At one point, I needed to grab my backpack, and I stood up too quickly. My elbow caught the edge of a plate that was mounted on the wall behind me. It tilted forward on its stand and started to fall. I caught it. The plate didn't even come close to hitting the ground. My reflexes were good, and I grabbed it before it had fallen more than a few inches. It was completely fine, not a scratch on it. But Jessica's dad must have heard something because he came down the hallway at a speed I didn't think middle-aged men could move. He burst into the room and saw me holding the plate, and his face went from worried to absolutely furious in about half a second. He got right up in my face, so close I could smell the coffee on his breath. His fists were clenched at his sides and he was shaking. For a solid 5 seconds, I genuinely thought he was about to hit me. His jaw was tight and his eyes had this wild look in them, like I just killed his dog or something instead of briefly displacing a decorative plate. Jessica jumped up and started apologizing for me, saying it was an accident, that the plate was fine. Her mom appeared in the doorway making these nervous sounds and trying to defuse the situation. Her dad finally stepped back and took the plate from my hands like I was contaminating it just by touching it. He examined it from every angle, checking for chips or cracks that definitely weren't there. Then he carefully placed it back on its stand and adjusted it until it was at exactly the right angle. The whole time, Jessica and her mom were doing this weird forced laughter thing, going, "Haha, Dad's so protective of his collection. Haha, he's so funny about his plates." But there was nothing funny about it. The guy had been ready to physically attack a 16-year-old kid over a piece of dishware. I made an excuse about having to be home for dinner and got out of there as fast as I could. Jessica texted me later apologizing and acting like it was no big deal, just her dad being passionate about his hobby. A few weeks later at lunch, I made the mistake of asking her why her family had so many plates. I genuinely wanted to understand what the appeal was. Maybe if I got it, the whole situation would make more sense. She launched into this hour-long explanation about the history of decorative plates, the craftsmanship involved, the artistry of different periods and styles. She talked about Wedgwood and Royal Doulton and limited edition commemorative series with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for their favorite bands or sports teams. She showed me pictures on her phone of plates her family was hoping to acquire. She knew the approximate value of every plate in their collection. I sat there nodding and trying to look interested while internally screaming. By the time lunch ended, I knew more about collectible dishware than any human being should ever know. We finished out the school year as friends but drifted apart after that. I never went back to her house. Every time she invited me over, I'd come up with some excuse. I felt bad about it, but I just couldn't handle being in that plate museum again, constantly terrified that I'd breathe wrong and cause thousands of dollars in porcelain damage. Last I heard, Jessica went to college for art history. I hope she has an apartment with blank walls.